of Cabinet on the 6th of December 2021. First item on the meeting is apologies. There are no actual apologies, but have joining the meeting online tonight councillors Akagina, Pritchard, Skeet and Welton. So they'll be joining us on Zoom. So, and also several officers are also joining the meeting remotely as well and may be speaking later. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Okay, there's none. Then item 3 is the minutes of the meeting. The last meeting was held on the 8th of November. Can they be agreed? That's agreed. No disagreement. So we'll move on to item 4, which is reference from the Sustainable Communities Overview and Scrutiny Panel. The first speaker is the chair of that panel, Councillor Aidan Mundy. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to present the latest recommendations from the Sustainable Communities Panel that are looking at addressing the challenges of fly tipping, decreasing contamination in our waste and making it more accessible, bulky waste and garden waste collections to those on council tax support. The borough has made a tremendous strides in managing its waste, where there once was split bags, we have containerisation. This has meant we're able to standardise how waste is collected, increasing the speed and efficiency of collections. We've also dramatically decreased the amount of waste going to landfill and improved the environment tremendously. There are still, of course, challenges. Fly tipping is a scourge. Our borough and the government needs scourge on our borough, and government needs to act to provide the powers and unblock the means to which local authorities can pursue organised fly tippers who dump large quantities of waste with little or no regard for the resources it takes to clean them up. Finally, our panel requests a feasibility study to assess how we can lower the cost barriers for garden and bulky waste collection for those less able to afford the service. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mundy. And the lead member for this item is Cabinet Member Councillor Natasha Irons.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Chair of the Sustainable Communities Panel. It was a great meeting, and it was really helpful to hear some of the ideas around increasing our recycling and driving that forward motion in terms of making even greater gains. We're currently 8th out of all London boroughs for our recycling rates, which is really down to our community really engaging with containerisation. The challenges we have to kind of really go forward is to get those take-up rates in bulky in garden waste collections. So the idea of incentivising that for people who may find cost as a barrier is something that that we're looking at, as long as we can find it within budget. Hopefully it's something we can deliver. And then around large estates and contamination, it's such an issue, and increasing communication around those things is definitely something we need to do. So we're more than happy to take that on, and also to continue to lobby for extra support for fly tipping. It costs us almost £1 million to deal with it here. It's not unique to Merton, it's a national issue, and we need a national response that we can all deliver locally to tackle the fly tippers. So thank you very much for recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Irons. The lead officer for this item is Chris Lee, the Director of Environment and Regeneration. Chris, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just a couple of points, Chair. Firstly, just to thank Scrutiny for their focus on this topic. I thought it was a very useful discussion, and we're happy to explore the issues raised. Recycling is extremely important, but I think the only other point I'd raise is the fact that waste minimisation is really the prize that we're aiming for. So whilst we'll continue to work on recycling, it's slightly further upstream that we want to focus a lot of attention to encourage residents not to generate the levels of waste that we have at the moment because of the cost and the impact on carbon. But happy to explore these matters, Chair.
That's very sensible. A good point. Obviously, we want to reduce the amount of waste overall, and that's very helpful there. And Councillor Irons has referred to the action that the council's taken to really crack down on people who fly tip and people who litter, and the number of fines that we're handing out for that. So that's good work on there. I don't see any other speakers, so if there aren't, can we agree recommendation 1 as per the report on page 9? Can we agree? Good, it is agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move to the next item, and I would suggest, if it's okay with colleagues, that we take items 5 and 6 together. Item 5 is the business plan 2022 to 26. And item 6 is the financial monitoring report, period 7. And lead member on this is Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Tobin Byers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll start with item 5, the business plan, and then move on to take the financial monitoring report. So can I start by thanking Roger Kershaw and Caroline Holland, as ever, for all of their work that goes into the business plan. This is now looking a little bit more like the business plan that we will formally adopt at Council next March, albeit there are still a number of gaps and information to be included. What we now have within this business plan at Appendix 3 are the proposed savings, which will balance the budget in 2022-23 and reduce the gap in 2023-24. The equality impact assessments are currently being finalised for the savings, and they'll be sent out with the member information packs, which will then go through the scrutiny, the budget scrutiny process in January, and they'll come back for Cabinet to approve before they go on to Council in March. The business plan also includes at Appendix 4 the draft list of unachievable savings. These were previously reported in the business plan, but we've now included the full list. And again, it's proposed that they go through scrutiny in January. At Appendix 1, we've included the proposed council tax base. And at this stage, Cabinet is minded to take the adult social care precept that the government announced in the budget last month. I think it remains regrettable that the government chooses to push these costs onto local government and ultimately onto our residents rather than properly funding adult social care themselves. But ultimately, it is important to us that we do support the most vulnerable residents in the borough, and therefore it is right that we take the adult social care precept at 1%. We are still awaiting the final detail of the local government settlement. I believe we're expecting it on the 15th of December, and that might ultimately change some of these assumptions. But at present, with the savings that are being put forward for consideration at scrutiny in the new year, the MTFS, as at Appendix 2, shows that the budget would be balanced in 2022-23, but that we would still have a gap of nearly £13 million in 2023-24. The table at 2.4.6 shows the impact of the coronavirus pandemic over the current financial year, and is a nice segue into the financial monitoring paper, because what that shows is that without coronavirus costs, we would be showing a net positive variance of 1.9 million. But with COVID costs, what we're actually showing is a net negative variance of 8.5 million. And that's because the COVID costs alone show a net negative variance of some £10.5 million. The financial monitoring report, as I said, shows an overall variance of £8.5 million. And ultimately, whilst the service spend has improved from the previous period, we received less funding than we had been anticipating for some of our COVID costs, and that's why the overall variance has worsened. The cost of COVID in terms of the income loss and unachieved savings and additional expenditure has also risen over the past month, as set out in the table on page 14. And as I've previously said, we're not anticipating at this stage any further coronavirus related support funding. What the government said is that it will all be bundled up into the settlement. So barring any change in that position, we don't at this point in time envisage getting any further support from the government for coronavirus. The other big item that's impacted our budget in recent years is the dedicated schools grant. And as the report makes clear, the council has been in discussion with the Department for Education, set out in page 25, and a number of meetings have now taken place. But we're not anticipating any resolution or any details of any financial support that we might receive until late January next year, which will make it very difficult for us to then build that into the MTFS. So I just end by thanking Caroline and Roger for their work on the financial monitoring as well, and indeed thanking all officers for their work in managing budgets in what is still an extraordinarily difficult period to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Byers. Please do accept our thanks, all the officers involved in this. And we have on the line Caroline Holland, who's the Director of Corporate Services. Thank you, Caroline, for the work that you put into this and for your team. There's the two reports. Would you like to add anything to Councillor Byers' introduction?
Just very briefly, Chair, we also agree in the council tax base, which shows that there has been an increase in the number of dwellings and an increase in the collection rates. The council tax collection does appear to be holding strong at this moment in time, unlike business rates collection, which is significantly under where we thought we would be. And again, just to clarify that the next report to Cabinet will have the update on the financial settlement, but it's unlikely we'll have the outcome of the impact of the discussions with the DfE until our February Cabinet paper. So unfortunately with the DfE timers, it does leave us very late to try and pull everything together, but we are working on doing so. And as Councillor Byers said regarding the outturn, the situation has got slightly worse again, so we're keeping a close eye on that and doing sort of some detailed investigations into some of the spend items, in particular for the monthly monitoring, which will be coming to you in January as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Don't think there's anyone else wishing to speak, but it's obviously very striking that the additional costs of COVID are more than £10 million greater than we're looking to be reimbursed by the government, and that's obviously going to have an impact on us. I'd like to thank everybody for their input into these papers, and the business plan would move on to the next stage. If we can agree, item 5, which is the business plan recommendations 1 to 6, are they agreed? They're agreed. And item 6 is the financial monitoring report. Recommendations there are recommendations A and B. Can we agree those as well? Very good, they're agreed too. Okay, the next few items, there are confidential papers relating to all of these. So I'm hoping that we're able to deal with certainly the next 2 or 3 items on the agenda without needing to refer to those confidential papers. However, if anyone feels that they do want to refer to them, then please let me know, and we'll need to exclude the public from the meeting at that point. So those reports are not to be referred to or circulated. So item 7 is the disposal of surplus property assets, and the lead member on this is Councillor Tobin Byers.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start by thanking officers for all their work on this, and in particular James McGinley and Jackie Denton, both of whom have done a lot of work on this report. I'd also like to thank Councillor Welton for his input. Whilst this technically sits with me as it deals with council assets, clearly Councillor Welton, being responsible for housing, has a very strong interest in this too, and has been very closely involved in the development of this report. And I know he'll come in after me and say something about the housing aspect of it. The report asks Cabinet to declare the sites that are within the confidential appendix that you've referred to as being surplus and therefore available for housing. The report also seeks authority for the decision on the individual sites to be delegated to the Director of Environment and Regeneration in consultation with myself. And it seeks authority that this is done on one of the options set out in paragraph C of the recommendations. So either that they are disposed to maximise the capital receipt, disposed to provide redevelopment with 50% affordable housing, or disposed to provide redevelopment with 100% affordable housing. And the confidential appendix that you've alluded to provides some valuations that the council's obtained based on those three options. What this report does not do is dispose of any of those sites on any particular tenure type. It simply declares them surplus and puts in place a mechanism for their disposal. But what we will then have to do is go through on a site-by-site basis and determine how we wish to dispose of the sites. Set out at paragraph 5.2 is the intention to dispose of the Moranton sites, the sites that were formerly owned by the Moranton Property Company, as a first tranche of sites, and to seek to achieve 100% affordable housing on those sites. And I know Councillor Welton will address that when he speaks. All of the other sites will then need to go through a process to determine on what basis the council seeks to dispose of them. And as part of that process, we will need to balance the benefits derived from the capital receipt with the benefits derived from the housing and tenure type that we could achieve on each site. Whilst I said at the outset that the formal mechanism is delegated to the Director of Environment and Regeneration in consultation with myself, it is envisaged that there would be a wider project team who would be involved in the decision on a site-by-site basis, as set out at paragraph 2.12. And ultimately that would ensure that all those factors that I've alluded to would be taken into consideration prior to any decision on an individual site being taken. I know Councillor Welton will address some of the wider housing measures in the report, so I'll leave it there, but just reiterate my thanks to officers for their work on this report. Thank you, Chair.
No, that's quite right, Councillor Byers. A lot of work has been put in by a lot of people over some time on this, so thank you to them. At this stage, I'd like to bring in Councillor Martin Welton, because there are a number of initiatives in this report relating really to housing. It's not just about disposals necessarily. So, Councillor Welton, do you want to introduce some of those items?
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to reiterate my thanks to James McGinley and Jackie Denton for the work that was undertaken in terms of this report. As Cabinet Member with responsibility for housing, I am delighted we are looking at 100% affordability on the Moranton sites. With detailed planning permissions already in place, it will allow us to start the process of getting these sites sold and providing much needed new affordable housing units in the borough, and hopefully all at social rent. This will be providing an additional 112 housing units and allow us to work with those registered housing providers. As a borough, we are limited in the number of sites we have available, and we do not have vast swathes of surplus sites. This report sets out the sites we do believe that have no other use but housing, plus to identify those sites that the council currently own, which have been previously used for non-residential purposes. This will start to make a help in terms of delivering homes, but has been outlined in many previous reports. This would only deliver just over 400 housing units, which is under half our yearly housing target, We know that we have many homes that need to be built if we are even to make a dent in the housing crisis. The more government grant which is made available, the more homes for social rent which will be provided. And I reiterate that there is still more work to do, but this sets out the roadmap. This report also sets out the intention to look at the introduction of an Article 4 direction in parts of Merton for homeowners that wish to convert properties from a residential property into an HMO. Many residents have been repeatedly frustrated due to the growing number of homes which are being converted and the knock-on effect this has on communities. Currently, the position is that in planning terms, between 3 and 6 people can share a home without having to seek planning permission for it to become a HMO in planning terms. Planning permission will always be required when changing a single home to a larger HMO containing 7 or more people. Over the past few years, we have seen the Conservative government relaxing planning rules whereby they don't require council sign-off under disguise of permitted developments. Many London boroughs have already introduced Article 4 directions, including our neighbouring boroughs of Croydon and Lambeth. This will allow elected members to have a say on conversions, unlike at present where applications are automatically granted with the council powerless to act. An Article 4 direction does not mean that a particular type of development is prevented. It simply means that the landowner now has to seek planning permission to undertake the work, whereas before the work was considered permitted without requiring that consent. On houses of multiple occupation licensing, we are building up an evidential base for the possible introduction of a selective landlord licensing scheme in Merton. Many councils have already introduced selective landlord licensing, which go beyond the existing statutory requirements, where homes of 3 stories or 5 or more people, or ones that make up 2 or more households, must be licensed by the council. This is primarily so the local authority can ensure that health and safety standards are met in high-risk HMOs, but also as well, the introduction of selective licensing scheme will allow more regulation in terms of refuse arrangements and in terms of health and safety within those properties. To introduce this does require further work and building the evidential base across Merton, as any Article 4 scheme requires sign-off, along with a selective licensing scheme of over 20% of homes by the Secretary of State. Therefore, both on Article 4 and selective landlord licensing, further reports will be coming to Cabinet in March on both these issues, where a decision will be taken on whether to proceed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. There's because of the nature of this report, it actually cross-cuts a number of the departments of the council. In terms of pure disposals, the the director responsible is Caroline Holland, the Director for Corporate Services. But because this also covers some housing policy and some planning issues, it's also under the remit of the directors, John Morgan and Chris Lee as well. Caroline, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything, and then if John or Chris do, we'll come back into the room.
I had nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you, Caroline, but thank you to your team for the work on this report. John or Chris, was there anything you'd wanted to add on these items? Chris?
Nothing to add, Chair. And nothing to add from me, Chair.
Okay, and again, thank you for the time that you and your staff have put into helping us with this. But we've put into this report some really important initiatives to show that we're serious about tackling rogue landlords and dealing with the issue of property owners dividing their buildings into houses of multiple occupation dangerously. And we want to defend the rights of our residents as much as possible there. But also, as we're able to announce, really go public about our intentions to use the Moranton Housing Company site in order to deliver more affordable housing, which I think is a really important initiative and shows that we're serious about tackling the need for affordable housing amongst our residents as well. And I think that people will regard that as a major step forward. So do appreciate the work that, that Cabinet members and officers have put into this. Can we all agree recommendations A to E of this report? I've heard that's agreed. That's great. Thank you very much. So, excuse me. Moving on to the next item, which is the award of term building services contracts for the planned preventative maintenance and reactive repairs of building services, plant and equipment. And once again, the Cabinet member responsible is the Cabinet member for Finance, Councillor Tobin Byers.
Thank you, Chair. I might have less to say on these reports than I did on the earlier reports, you'll be pleased to hear. Can I start by thanking Nick Layton for the work that's gone into this report and procurement process. This report proposes the award for the maintenance of the contract for the maintenance of the council's buildings for a 4-year period with a potential extension of 2 years plus 1. The current contracts expire at the end of March 2022, and these would be commencing from April. The award comprises 6 separate lots as set out on page 73, paragraph 216, for fabric, M&E, air conditioning, Legionella, fire alarms and a data centre. And it's proposed to award appoint 5 contractors across those 6 lots, which is covered in the confidential appendix. It would include the maintenance of all properties within the facilities management portfolio, and it also has a call-off arrangement for schools should they wish to utilise that. It's been through the council's procurement process, and all the details are included in the report. And the proposed contractors, as I said, are set out in the appendix. So I commend it to colleagues.
No, thank you, Councillor Byers. The director responsible once again is Caroline Holland, Director of Corporate Services. Caroline, did you have anything that you would like to add?
Nothing to add on this one. Thank you, Chair.
As has been said repeatedly throughout the meeting, please do pass on our thanks to your staff who've worked on this, because it's an important piece of work for us all. So thank you for that. I don't think there's any other speakers, so can we agree to the recommendations A and B that are on page 71, I think. Is that agreed? Very good, that's agreed. And so we move on to yet another item that's being led by Councillor Tobin Byers. This one's the award of contract for the supply of power.
Don't know why I keep putting my mask on in between, but thank you, Chair. And can I start by thanking Richard Neal on this item for his work on this contract and procurement process. This is the contract award for the supply of power. Again, it's proposed to award the contract on a 4-year period with the option to extend for a further year. And again, the current contract expires in March 2022, and this is proposed to commence from April 2022. The contract would be for the supply of power to all council buildings, including those schools which choose to opt in. As the report sets out, whilst we had quite a number of expressions of interest, we did only receive 1 bid, and this has been assessed as set out in 2.11 by way of a comparison with the council's current contract and other prices within the wider market. We have also sought to obtain some feedback from those bidders who had initially expressed an interest but ultimately chose not to bid, and that feedback will be used to inform the supply of gas procurement process, which will be coming to a cabinet in due course. So as with the last one, I do thank the officer involved and commend it to colleagues. Thank you.
Absolutely, and more to look forward to by the sounds of things. Once again, Caroline Holland, Director of Corporate Services, you're the lead officer on this. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nothing to add on this one. Thank you, Chair.
And we seem to be going around in circles on this one, but thank you again to you and your team for your work on this and for getting good value for the council. Do appreciate it. There's nobody indicated they wish to speak, so can we move to agreeing recommendations A to C? Okay, they're all agreed. Now that's the last of the public items for tonight, but there is some private business that we need to go into private session for. So I just need to resolve for the exclusion of the public. So this is item 10 on the agenda, which is to resolve that the public are excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following reports on the grounds that they are exempt from disclosure for the reasons stated in the reports. Can that be agreed? That's agreed. Okay, we'll just wait for a moment for the YouTube to